everyone. Welcome to Baking Some Birthday Cupcakes with me, Michelle Wilding from Boozy Bakers. So I'm just going to let everyone just log on for a minute and get themselves sorted. You are welcome to bake along with me or just watch, ask questions as much as you like. I will answer them, and then you can have a go later if you'd like. It's all available to watch later on, so that's no problem at all. So if you are with me, please do say hello. It's lovely to hear from you and where you are from and what the weather's doing. Let's be very British about it. Actually, really good time today. I've got my bunting up, you see, that way behind me. But it's actually my daughter's birthday today as well. So it's a double birthday for her and for Virtual Village Hall. Right. What I am going to do today as well is, as I go along, I'm going to give you alternatives. So if you are gluten-free or dairy-free, I will give you some alternatives. I do use a different recipe for vegan because we are going to use eggs, so that's a completely different recipe for that. But hopefully I can give you some different alternatives that you can use for the others. Right, so if you're ready, I'm going to, first of all, I've got myself nice big glass bowls so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to add some margarine. So I've got 120 grams. Now we're going to make about 8 to 12 cupcakes. And it really depends on what size cases you're using. Mine are quite large. Bear with me, I'll put the margarine down for a minute and show you. Mine are muffin cases. They say cupcake, but they are big. Let's get one out. So mine are this kind of size, but you can get smaller. So if you get smaller, you're going to end up making more. If you don't want to make that many and you just want to make a few, then you can halve this mixture. And if you are baking along with me, then you are going to need to know the oven details, and I'll repeat this later as well. But if you do want to bake along, my oven is preheated to 165 degrees fan. I do 180 for regular and gas smart 4. So that's what it's heated to. So I'm using margarine for my sponge cake. Now you can use butter. I would always say soften this if you're going to use butter, because otherwise you're going to really be struggling to stir it. So there we go. That's 120 grams of that. You can also use plant-based ones, which of course, vegetable fat will do that. And then to my butter, I'm going to use 120 grams of caster sugar. There we go. Before I do anything else or add anything else, I'm just going to give this a really good mix up. Now I'm using a wooden spoon today just because, from experience, if I use a glass bowl so you can see and a metal spoon, it gets really noisy. So ordinarily, I tend to use a metal spoon, but it doesn't really matter for this. You can also use a mixer, but again, for the small amount I'm doing, and for the fact that you won't be able to hear me if I've got my mixer on, I'll do it by hand. But if you want to cause less like elbow kind of action, a mixer will be fine. Just a low speed will be fine to do this part. There we go. I'm just going to give it a nice stir up. There we go. And combine it like so. Now, I'm using medium eggs. I don't get too fussy about the size of eggs. Eggs are there to bind your ingredients together. So if 2 eggs, which are smaller, will be fine. We're just going to loosen the mix with a bit more of milk. So don't get too hung up on the size of the eggs, but mine are medium, just in case you are wondering. And I'm going to break those and add them. There we go. And we'll just add those. Now, when you add eggs to your butter and sugar, there is every chance it's going to start looking curdled. So if this was a larger mix and I was using a lot more eggs, then I would probably add some of the egg and then some of the flour, some of the egg and some of the flour to stop it curdling. But to be honest, it's such a small amount. The minute we add the flour, that's going to disappear. So I'll show you what I mean in just a second, and you can see what I mean by curdling. So don't worry if that happens. It's basically when it looks like it's separating. So without pouring this onto the laptop, that would be disastrous. I wonder if you can see that. Can you see? It doesn't look like a smooth, creamy mixture. The eggs and the rest of the ingredients are separated, so we call it curdling. But the minute I add the flour, that's not going to happen. So if you're following along, and I may have gone too fast, at the moment, I've got 120 of butter or margarine if you prefer, 120 grams of caster sugar, and 2 eggs. And to that, I'm going to add 120 grams of self-raising flour. So it's all 120. And actually, if you weigh your eggs, they're probably around 120. So it's nice and easy to remember. And I'm also going to add half a teaspoon of baking powder to that. I'm going to fold that in, and hopefully you'll see that we've got a nice creamy mix. Now, I've recommended for this workshop some vanilla extract. You can make this as you want. You don't have to add anything. You could add lemon zest and lemon extract, lime, orange extract. You could even take out a spoonful of the flour and add a spoonful of cocoa instead to be able to make chocolate cupcakes. So you've got some variations there to have a go with. Now, one thing I did say was that I was going to give you some alternatives. So one of those is with the flour, if you're gluten-free, to simply substitute the self-raising flour for free from self-raising flour. So Dove's do one. It is a finer, much finer flour, but you should be all right with the same amount. So don't feel that you have to add more to it. The same quantity is fine. Now, I will show you where we are. Can you see that that is much smoother now, but it is quite thick. So what I want to do is just loosen that a little bit with a couple of spoonfuls of milk. There we go. And another one. You can always add more. It's harder to take it away. So I'm going to add that. And I'm also going to go with vanilla because you can't beat a vanilla sponge. You can get ones which are really good though. Right, okay. So I'm just going to add a little bit of vanilla to that. There we go. Give that a stir in. Now this is still quite a thick batter, but it is looser. So I'll bring it up and I'll show you where I'm at with it now. So it will come off of the spoon. It's not so thick that it stays on, but it is still a thick batter. Now I've got my muffin tray. And I've got my cases. Now you can also get silicone cases that you can reuse. So you can use those if you prefer. So I'm just going to add, I think, goodness, that is quick. We still have to do the decorating of these, so still plenty more to do. So I'm going to put 9 cases in and see where we get to with that. I'm going to scrape off my wooden spoon. There we go. And then I'm going to add a good heap spoonful to each one. Now, about halfway is good. So I'm going to just pop some in, but then I'm probably going to go back round and just top them up a little bit. So usually in these cases, this mix will do about 8. So I always put another one in, just in case. I can always remove it from my tray. But I will do the 8 and then I will go back round and just top them up a little bit. And if we've still got lots, then I'll do that 9th. As I said, if you're using smaller cases, you will fill this tray. There we go. You could, if you wanted as well, add sultanas or cherries or chocolate or soft fruit. So these are, it's a nice versatile mix. If you're adding soft fruit, I would say stud it when you've got them in the cases. I wouldn't necessarily add it into the batter and then spoon it out because the weight of it tends to make them sink. So I would probably stud it afterwards. There we go. Let me just scrape this out a bit. Don't need that one, so we'll put that away. And I've just got a little silicone scraper just to help me make sure I get all the batter. And the advantage with that as well is I'm not adding all that greasy from this bowl to my washing up either. There we go. So I'm just going to scrape that down and then use that mixture. There we go. Just top those up. Now, if you're doing this with a little one and you want to get them into baking, but the idea of the mess is just too much, here's an idea for you. If you get an IKEA bag, you know, the sandwich bags that you can tie, have like a zip at the top, put all the ingredients into that and then let them just squish it with their hands, and then you can just pour it out from there. Right, so those are my cases. So you can see that they're halfway filled now. And I'm going to pop those into the oven and I'm going to bake them for between I would suggest 18 to 20 minutes. Ovens all vary just ever so slightly. So mine take more like 20 minutes. And again, if you've got smaller cupcakes, then you might need to reduce that to more like 15, 16 minutes, just due to the size being smaller. So let me put these in and then we'll look at how we're going to top them. There we go, timer on those so I can't get distracted. Now, they don't take that long to do and they don't take that long to cool, so you can enjoy them quite quickly. So I gave 2 different ways that you could decorate your cupcakes. Both have icing sugar, but it depends on the look you want. So you can either do a runny icing, still making it quite a paste and let it set flat on top of the cake, or you could do a buttercream and you can make a swirl. So I'm going to do both for you just so you get an idea of consistencies. So bear with me whilst we do the first one. So in this bowl, I've got 400 grams of icing sugar. Now, some icing sugars are really good at being very soft and kind of sifted. Other ones I've found get a bit lumpy. So if you get a lumpier icing sugar, you might want to sieve it first. And then for this, I've got, so that's 400 of icing sugar and then 200 of butter. Now, this is softened butter. I don't use margarine. I like the taste of butter when that's all you're adding. It's just the 2 ingredients. If you are vegan or rather dairy free, because obviously we've got the eggs in this recipe, but for other recipes, then I would suggest a block of plant-based butter. If you use a spread, it will go softer. Whereas a block, whether you're doing, and this again with butter rather than like a spreadable one, always get the blocks because they will keep their shape when you kind of mix it all together. So then in it goes. There. So that's 400 of icing sugar, 200 of the softened butter. And I just chopped it up and just put it into the microwave for a tiny amount of time just to make it softer. Otherwise, it's really hard work on your elbow. So I'm just using the back of the spoon just to mix it together. And I'm just being careful at this stage because there is a lot of white, fluffy, powdery icing sugar that could easily tip everywhere. So I'm just using the back and just pushing that icing sugar into the butter. Now, if you do have any questions, please do ask away. I'm very happy to answer. So if you've had any baking disasters or you'd like to know anything about cakes or bigger cakes, do now's your chance. You might as well. If you did want to make a bigger cake, just anticipating this for anyone watching later, you can use the same recipe and just, what would I say, double it for a smaller cake, triple it for a slightly larger cake, and you can split it between 2 Victoria Sponge tins, and you can cook it at the same temperature, but you will need to cook it for just a bit longer, say half an hour to 40 minutes. I will go into, when those cakes come out, we will look at, we'll see how we do for time, but to tell they're done, there's various ways, and I can show those to you, but first and foremost, does it smell done? Because if you can't smell cake, it's probably not ready yet. The minute you can smell it, is a really good indicator that they're done. When you open up the oven, if you move the rack and they wobble, they're not done. Quickly close the door, put them back, put another 5 minutes on. If they don't wobble and you're not sure, then you can lightly press the top. Be careful not to burn yourselves doing this, but if you lightly press the top, so you just press down with your finger and the sponge bounces back, so it presses down but bounces back, that's a sign they're done. Also colour, they should be golden. And the other one, like, especially if you're doing big cakes and if you're not sure, get a skewer and put it into the middle. And if you bring it out and it's not wet and it's dry, then it's done. If you bring it out and you're getting soggy cake mixture on it, again, pop it back in the oven, close the door and give it another 5-10 minutes for bigger cakes. You see that I'm putting a bit more pressure into this now. I've kind of got it. It looks more like I'm making an apple crumble mix. It's kind of that kind of texture. You are adding twice as much dry to the wet or wetter, with the butter. So it is a little bit of elbow grease, and it definitely is easier if you're doing this with a mixer. But it's entirely possible by hand, as I'm demonstrating. I am holding onto the bowl though, just so it doesn't fly off. And you can soften this down. So if it's too thick, you can add a little water, you can add a little flavouring, and just bring it to a softer mix. You see that mine's really together now. You see that? But it is really thick. And again, squeezing that out or trying to spread it over a cake, you'd end up damaging the cake. So you do need it to be softer. Right. What I'm going to do is add a little bit of vanilla extract, as I want some flavour to this. There we go. And we'll see what that's looking like. But I think it will need some bit of liquid just to make it a bit easier to spread. It'd be interesting to know what your favourite flavour cakes are too. My daughter, it's always red velvet. I have to say it's one of my favourites. I also like a Guinness and chocolate cake. I think that's really nice and rich. But I just think can't beat a Victoria sponge sometimes. Do you like a vanilla cake? I think it's so versatile as well because you can top it with so many things and fresh fruit as well. Right, so it feels smoother now I've added the vanilla. It doesn't look as kind of rusticy, but it is really thick still, really, really thick. So I'm going to just add a little bit of water to that. So I put about a tablespoon in. And again, just do it gradually so that we don't make a mess. And you don't want it too thin. So I'm just holding it against my body just so I can really give that a good stir. So it's getting easier, but it's still, for me, that bit too thick. That's where we are now. But it's just, you can hear the bowl going. I can stir it more easily, but it's still, for a cake, when you've got that delicate sponge on top, you don't want to rip it off by trying to spread it around. So I'm just going to add about another tablespoon to the mixture and just mix that in. There we go. And you can see that I'm cutting through that with a bit more ease now. So to the eye online, you can't see that there's any difference. It's still really thick. You know, there's no real telltale difference. But when you watch that I'm stirring it, I'll tip it up. I'm able to cut through it. It's not difficult. So that's a nice consistency. Now, that's one way of doing it. And the other way I said is to get just icing sugar and some water and make it into a paste. So I'm going to do that as well. And then I have got a couple of cakes while we're waiting for those to try it out on. So I didn't actually measure this out. I'm very sorry. I would imagine that is about 200 grams of icing sugar. But I'm going to give about a tablespoon of water and give that a mix. Now, I find this is always catches my kids out because it's quite deceiving. You really don't need a lot of water to mix with the icing sugar, and you need to try to mix it together before adding any more water. So that looks like it's going to be too little water, and it might be, but it's really important to try and just get all the icing sugar into it, because I do find all of a sudden you add the same again and you don't need it, and then you end up with this kind of, you put more water and then you need more icing sugar, and then you end up with huge quantities that you don't need. So I'm just mixing that up, and that has actually come into more or less a paste. It's too thick, so I'm going to add a little bit, but it doesn't need a lot. So just more like a teaspoon at a time now. Hold it against my body. I'll try and do it so you can see it as well. Yeah, still a bit thick. Add a bit more. There we go. Give that a stir. And that's looking a bit better now. You can see that how quickly I suddenly start stirring. It's because it's just got a lot looser. There we go. So consistency-wise, you can see that's pouring from the spoon, but it's still quite thick. So it shouldn't be really, really runny that it just gets out of control on the cakes. I'm going to put that down for a moment and look at how I'm going to apply those to the cakes. With the runny icing, all you're going to need is a spoon. With the buttercream, you have options. So let me bring over what I've got. Now I've got a few examples here. Now, if you are new to baking and you don't have any equipment, that's fine. You can spoon on the buttercream on top. And you can still make it look quite pretty, but in a different way. Otherwise, you could use, now I've got disposable ones because of my business, but a piping bag. Now, if you have piping bags, but you don't have nozzles, you can just cut the end off here and just pipe through, and it will just be a rounded, what am I trying to say? Like decoration, it will look smoother. If you have got more or want to invest in some, I've got a star shape, so I'll bring that up and I'll try and tilt it so you can see. So it's got quite deep star shape in that, and that will give a really nice design. So let's try various ones and I'll show you what I can do with them. So if I don't have anything, you can also use a sandwich bag for that, by the way. If you don't have a piping bag, but you want to have a go, you could pop it all and then cut off the corner of a little sandwich bag. So how much you put on is up to you. But if you get a spoonful, I've got a teaspoon there that I've heaped up of buttercream. And then I'm going to use the back of the teaspoon, in fact, just to squidge it down a bit. So I'm bringing this up to you a bit closer. But you can just use the back of the spoon to smooth that out. Just push it to the edges by the case, like so. If you want to be a little bit more designery, you could clean the back of your spoon a bit and then go round in a kind of circular motion going inwards. So just smooths it out a bit. I don't know if you can see that or whether my lights are playing up with that. Now to decorate, I have some various sprinkles. Now I collect ends of sprinkles and add them to little dishes and cover them to just make really fun flavors. So these are inexpensive sprinkles, but I've got some various, I've got little strands and stars and hundreds of thousands in there. And just as and when things are used up, I just have like a party mix that I make up. Now, if you're going to apply these to buttercream, particularly if it's more looks like a Mr. Whippy in the way you've put the buttercream on, you do want to add your sprinkles quite smartish before it kind of crusts up, because the minute it kind of dries, it's really difficult. Those sprinkles will just fall off. So you can do that. Or if you're using a piping bag or any kind of bag that you're going to use a corner of, what I tend to do is I open it and I fold it over. So can you see my hands are fitting underneath? You could put this on like a highball tumbler if you wanted to fold it over. The reason I do that is so that we don't catch any of the buttercream on this part, so then it doesn't go all over our hands. So I'm going to snip the end off as well. And I'm going to add my nozzle. You don't need to add a nozzle, you can just go with as it is. And then I'm going to scoop up a load of the buttercream. So I've got the hole ready to put it into there. And just add that buttercream. Put a bit more in. There we go. And then you see all that area now has been untouched by the buttercream. So when you bring it together, I twist the top and I push the buttercream down. And then you just need to keep the top twisted and then apply some pressure. So to do buttercream decorating, I tend to start at the edge and I work in a circle, complete the circle, and then come in. And I also keep the nozzle quite low down. If you keep it high up, you end up with a less appealing look. So if I show you, I'll move this out the way so I don't catch the cake. There we go. So if I show you, I'm going to go low down and I'm following around the outside of the case. And then where I get to where it's joined, I'm now lifting it up slightly and I'm doing a smaller circle. And then if you want, you can lift up again and just finish it off to the top like that. And then to that, I'm going to add my sprinkles. There we go. And now a lot of sprinkles, if you are doing dietary requirements, a lot of sprinkles do contain various bits. And I think they're kind of the ones that people forget about necessarily. So you make the cake and you make sure that it's gluten-free and then you put the sprinkles on and check. And it's got gluten in it. So do be careful with your sprinkles if you are catering for a dietary requirement, what they've got in. But there are quite a few around that you can use. And the more basic ones particularly don't have anything in like those allergy, that would affect those allergies. Most are dairy free, unless they've got chocolate in. There we go. So there's another one. Now, how are we doing? We've only got 2 minutes left on those cakes, so I can show you what they look like when they come out. They are looking very pretty. What I can do is, don't worry, I haven't forgotten that the thin icing, I can put those on warmer cakes, so I will show you those. Right, so let's clear these off the table for a moment, just so I can put my rack on here and you can see what it looks like. And then we'll spoon on the royal icing onto some of these cakes. I'll get my oven gloves at the ready. If you do have a rack to use, brilliant. If you don't, then you can leave them in the tin to cool down a little bit. So don't worry too much, but they are quite a handy thing to have in the kitchen. Oh, do I do 19 minutes? Shall we be naughty and take them out a minute early? Should we do it? Let's do it. Okay, beep at me in a minute because I can't work out how to turn it off. There we go. So you can see they've risen. And when I press down, they bounce back up. They're golden. And I can smell the cake. So they are done. So, see, it might be a bit early to take them out at the moment, but let's have a go. I can manage it just. There we go. Just watch your fingers. It's worth letting them cool down for a moment. But in the interest of showing you how I decorate them, I'll take them out now. There we go. Now, these take around 10 minutes, 15 minutes to cool down completely. So if you're going to use buttercream, you want them to be absolutely cold. Otherwise, it will melt that butter. Bear with me, I'll put this down. There we go, beeping at me. Turn that off. There, lovely. So I've got the hot ones in front of me. And then I'm just going to take the spoon out. There. I get a teaspoon. Right, and with my teaspoon, I'm just going to place a spoonful of that on the top and push it to the sides very gently. I don't want to drag the cake. I don't want to spoil the sponge. And what I do tend to find is when you put this on a hot cake, it tends to set quite quickly. There we go. And I'm just letting that follow the edges into the case. So you can see it's filled it. And then again, you can put your sprinkles on. There we go. I really like the look of the flatter ones. And if you don't like buttercream and you don't want that extra sweetness, I think they're a really traditional way to decorate your cake. So I'm just going to do a couple more. So I'm just adding that on and then using the back of the spoon and just gradually just guiding it around to the edges of the case. There we go. And yeah, that first one is drying already. You can start seeing the shine change. I just think they're so cute like this. It's such a traditional English tea party look. So I'll do those. Do one more, and then I think we should light a candle and have them ready to go. So right, let's do this one. So if you're making these, do share your photos in the comment section. Let us know if you changed the flavour. What did you go for? There we go. Of course, if you are doing this and you think, oh goodness, this is too runny, just put a bit more icing sugar in. And if it is thick and it's kind of pulling up the top of the cake, add a bit more water. There we go. So that's those done. Now, I won't keep going because that might be very boring for you. So I've got some candles at the ready here. So let's move these along that I haven't done. There we go. And we'll add some of these buttercream ones. In fact, let's get a plate for them. There we go. Plate at the ready. And we'll put these on. And that did not take very long at all, did it? To make them and bake them and decorate them. So if you're in a rush, I would say do the icing sugar ones. There we go. Let's have a plate ready. And let's get a candle. Got very tall candles, but I think they're really pretty. There we go. And I have a match at the ready. I am prepared today. Whoops, other than throwing the matches around. There we go. Don't throw matches around. Okay, is it going to catch? There we go. So there we are, some birthday cupcakes for Virtual Village Hall. With buttercream and royal icing to decorate, whichever you choose. Happy birthday, Village Hall. It's an absolute pleasure to work with you. And I hope you all get a chance to make them and wish Virtual Village Hall a very happy birthday. So good luck with your bakes. Do share. And I will see you again another time. Bye, everyone.